Ring.
Welcome to another episode of the Vikingology podcast. I'm co-host number one, CJ Adrian.
And I'm co-host number two, Terry Barnes. And we are, as always, the art and science of the Viking Age. And today, direct from Iceland, we have a couple of great guests to talk to us about something we actually haven't even talked about before on this show, which is magic during the Viking Age. So I'm looking forward to this. And as you were saying before we turned the camera on, CJ, you're a little bit under the weather, so maybe they got a spell they can conjure and help your family get well.
Yes, indeed. I'm hoping because right now I feel cursed. And depending on maybe it's what's another society that had a lot of magic? I
Oh,
guess I
most
guess
probably.
us. Like, isn't the US like aren't Wiccans one of the fastest growing
Yeah, yeah,
denominations
yeah.
in the United States? So I don't know. I must have stepped on a Wiccan's toes, and they're like, "You shall be sick 3 times this year in a row." I'm so sorry. Whoever you are, I'm sorry. Can you lift the curse? Well, maybe I'll have some friends here lift
Yeah.
the curse today.
All right, so what we have, without further ado, we have Kári Paulsson, who is an Icelandic folklorist, and we were introduced through Joseph at Hildur, which is a publisher, and our friend of the show, Matthias Nordvig, has also been published by this group. And so they've got a lot of really interesting books, and we'll put a link in the show notes. But so there is a new book that's what's going to be shared today by Kauri and his partner Georgia, who are both people who have master's degrees from Háskóli Íslands. Woohoo! Yay! And that is in for Kauri, let's see, pre-Christian religions, Old Icelandic literature, degree in Old Norse religion, and Georgia archaeology. Yay! Archaeology and history always go together. And you also have a degree in Old Norse medieval studies from the same university. And but both of you are really interested in looking at folklore, and I mean, and makes sense why you'd be connected up with people like Matthias and have sort of like connections and all of that. But
Definitely.
anyway, so and you have a new book that was published that, well, actually, I mean, Joseph, I think they're scrambling to get new copies made because it's sold out so quickly. Um,
It's wonderful. Like
yeah, it's really great. But and it's just, I mean, as we were talking earlier, just I mean, it's so what is that? Kismet or something, when everything kind of sort of intersects and comes together. That in 6 years ago, when I was in Iceland, I went to the institute there at the university to look at some manuscripts, and I did not request this particular manuscript. They brought it out voluntarily. So, and it's this beautiful, tiny little book that has a lot of weird pictures in it. And you look
very
at it,
creepy.
and it's kind of creepy, and you're just like, what is going on here? And so you all are looking at the same exact manuscript, which is so insane. So this was meant to be, and so we'll show a few pictures of it too, so people can kind of get a sense of it. But welcome, welcome to Vikingology.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
What a honor to be here.
Ah,
Yeah, this small manuscript that you were mentioning earlier, it's a interesting manuscript. When I was transcribing it, which was very hard to do because it's very hard manuscript to decipher, and there's a lot of abbreviations
Abbreviations and yeah.
and weird abbreviations. So I was asking, opinions of friends of mine from the university to just like, do you agree with this interpretation or not? And then I asked my another friend, and he said, "Why are you sending me image of this manuscript? I saw it yesterday, and I told to my professor, it scares me. I'm afraid of it.
So,
Why is it following me?"
yeah, this manuscript really is like persecuting, like is showing up everywhere. And it was so funny. Like,
Yeah, I told him, "I'm sorry, my friend, but you can have a copy of this in your home very soon."
well, so okay, let's see. Can I share the screen real quick? Yeah, okay. So
yeah,
CJ, let
definitely.
me,
Yes, I
and
I
then
did
let's
give
just
you permission.
thank you. And then let's make sure that we've got the speaker view on too. So when they are explaining this, then people can see them as
There it
well.
is.
But so you can see this, there's my fingers there. I mean, it's a tiny little thing.
Tiny one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Here's some. So tell us, I mean, obviously a little bit about what you know about the imagery and what's going on there, but just in general, I mean, what is this book about? It's called Galdra Book or a Galdra Book, a Grimoire, and it's also what the language is. I mean, it looks like is it Old Icelandic or Icelandic there? So what are we seeing?
It doesn't really have a formal name. I mean, Galdrabók is a generic term for a grimoire, but I decided because it has the shell mark AM434D12MO,
Mm.
and I thought that was a little bit long to,
It was a bit complicated to remember,
yeah.
like.
So as soon as I started to transcribe the manuscript, which has not been done before, um, which is frankly quite weird to me.
Yeah, because it's super interesting. But,
and I started to transcribe it and translate it and look into the material. I noticed that every charm in this grimoire is focusing essentially on the earth.
Mm.
So I started jokingly to call it jarðskinna, which means earth skin, and by doing that I'm referring to other manuscripts and grimoires who have names: rauðskinna, gráskinna, fagurskinna. So something skinna is a common name for Icelandic manuscripts and grimoires.
Yeah.
So I started to call it jarðskinna for that reason. And but if we look at the image seen here, it's hard to decipher what the magic staffs themselves are saying. The drawings. I was trying to look a little bit into that, and I cannot come with a concrete conclusion what it is. But what's interesting here is that you're seeing two figures, and you see lines passing through their eyes and arguably through their ears. And looking at the, as you can see, it goes through one of their eye, and then it pops out through
through the ear.
Maybe through the ear or back of their head. We don't know, but which is rather interesting. But looking at the text, it talks about, as we can see here at the top, Sæll JB, which has been possibly Jarðarbúi, greetings Earth Dweller, because it's talking about some deities or some land spirits living inside the earth close to your farm. And here we see Sæll Jarðarbúi, segðu mér fréttir. Greetings Earth Dweller, tell me news. Ég Thorn, which is some kind of name. Á þig kalla, on you call, I call upon you. And then next it says upp stattu, ég vil, and then on the next page, finna þig, I want to find you. Láttu mig sjá þú liggur hér í. Let me see that you lay inside here. So you're calling upon some nature spirit inside the earth. So or a hill or something, which is something commonly you see in Icelandic folklore when there are some kind of land spirits that live in cliffs or inside some hills close to your farm.
The elves.
Yeah, basically.
And which is very interesting because when this manuscript was given to Árni Magnússon, which the institution is named after, and on a small note that Árni received this manuscript, and with it came a small note that says, I bring you in a good trust this small calfskin vellum grimoire that contains knowledge on how people in the past communicated around semi-homo or the hidden folks, huldufolk, which are the elves, as we call them. So the giver, he's saying this was used to communicate with huldufolk or álfar, the elves, Icelandic álfar, which is very, very interesting.
And it's also quite unique. Like this magic manuscript is very unique. Like all other kinds of magic manuscript that we have that have survived, so we still have nowadays, they deal with different kind of spells. So this is really unique. That's also why we were thinking like this is actually curious that it was never transcribed and translated and published before, because this is quite unique, like the material itself and also these drawings.
Yeah, it's way more usually
don't
when you
find
find
them in other.
usually when you find grimoires from this time, you have certain magic symbols, and it says if you want to protect yourself, do this
Carve
and
these,
carve this
symbol.
and recite this, and then you're safe.
Yeah.
It's more like indication. If you want to do this, then you do this and draw this, and voila.
Yeah.
But this is more personal.
Yeah, this is a bit different kind of concept going on, although you are still performing magic, and this is still a spell to conjure up the spirits, but it's still a bit different from like more the common type of magic manuscript that you would find.
One thing that comes to mind when looking at it and just the size of it. Well, okay, for one thing, I want to just clarify, and I can't remember but it looks from touching it, but it looks, visually here, like, it's not paper, is it? Is it like parchment or vellum or something? Is it on skin?
Yeah, cow skin.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the skinna part of it.
Yeah,
the medium. Yeah. And then the size of it, and just what it contains to me, I mean, in the Christian tradition, it seems in the Middle Ages, it seems similar, just like a breviary, like these small prayer books that people just
tiny,
sort of,
but yeah.
Yeah, that would be just these very personal little objects, right? For this kind of, spiritual whatever, kind of.
And I think it fits. Like, we don't know for certain, but I would argue the same. Like, this was highly personal kind of manuscript. Is very tiny, something that possibly the person would always keep with himself, herself.
I mean, arguably, yes, because the front and the back page of the manuscript is significantly more brown.
Okay.
So, like, when you put it inside you, it's easier for that to get stained.
Yeah.
So I want to jump in here because there are bells going off in my head. Can we go back to that first image? And now I'm going to do something. I'm going to go off the beaten path here and just propose a radical new interpretation of this, because
go ahead.
The first thing I saw is, hey, look, it's E.T. Look how long that neck is. And now aliens are supposedly what? They're supposedly telepathic. So you see this line that's going through their head, like they're able to see without speaking, right? And then the first line you translate says what? Greetings, Earth Dweller. I mean, this is a slam dunk, guys. This is a book about communicating with aliens. An alien came down to 13th century Iceland and was like, "Hey, guy, how's it going? Oh, how do I keep talking to you?" I mean, I don't know. It just went totally off. Like, I was like, this is aliens. They're talking to aliens.
Yeah, they look a bit like the drawings of these humanoid kind of figures with these legs and like one arm and not the other, actually.
I know what you mean, like planet Earth.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what is the year that this one was made?
It was given to Árni Magnússon in 1697.
Okay.
But the manuscript is earlier.
Yeah, it's based on the calligraphy. It's somewhere in the 1600s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arguably. It says that the first on the front cover, so behind this page here, what we're seeing now, it says that many are the things that young people like to conjure. This grimoire contains knowledge of contains information on how people in the past used magic. So it's indicating that this is some kind of old stuff. But how old it is, we don't know, of course. But based on
the writing and the abbreviations and stuff, we can date it, 1600. Obviously, we don't have the calendar date for that.
No.
But you can date the ink and things like that.
Yeah, could you take the vellum and date that?
I don't have the technology to do it myself.
I'm not sure if they. Well, for the ink, it would be a good guess if they maybe try to analyze it more.
Based on the calligraphy,
like the writing,
like, it's 1600s. So, my gut feeling is somewhere between 1600 and 1650 maybe.
Mhm.
That's my gut feeling. I don't know more than that.
So what's the text on this one say?
Um, so before we jump into that, I think it's a good idea we finish the first charm because these two are arguably linked together.
Yeah.
So this
Um,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says
here,
evil right there. I see why your friend doesn't like this book. I mean, lower right-hand corner of that first page, it says very clearly evil.
Evil.
evil. Yeah, I agree.
Don't talk to the aliens, they're bad.
So, yeah, it says here, maybe I just read
We
it.
can just read from
I
the
think it's read from
text.
English text. I have it here. Wait a sec. Greetings, Earth Dweller. Tell me news. I call upon you. Up, up, you shall stand. I want to find you. Let me see that you lay in here. Up, you shall stand. When I am sleeping peacefully, you shall converse to me. If you died not long ago, lend me your ears. So ears again. And let me see you. I will praise you from now on and be in any instance kind to you, if you like me and to me speak about most things that I want to know. I conjure you in or for the name of all creatures, and may this be. Up, you shall stand. When I have fallen asleep, in friendly terms you should talk to me. Be it so as I say. So what we're dealing with here is some kind of provocation. You're waking up this land spirit that lives in this hill or cliffs next to you, and you want that to come into your dream to deliver to you news or to deliver to you some kind of information.
Yeah, something that you want to know and you don't have knowledge about, but this land spirit obviously has knowledge about.
And this is a frequent thing in Icelandic folklore when you want to communicate with some land spirit that lives on your farm. Even in the late 19th and early 20th century, when people would settle on a farm on the countryside, and they wanted to build a house or they wanted to build a house for their sheep, they would go to that area and recite, I'm going to build here a house for my sheep. If you're against it, come to my dreams and tell me. So I will build it somewhere else. So people are actively trying to communicate with land spirits around them. And I think we're dealing with some kind of stuff like that here.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Völuspá, so like Odin, trying to, it's the same kind of thing. Like wake up
Get
and
knowledge.
tell me what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry. When you read that, it sounded like an alien abduction. Up from your sleep. I will come to you when you're asleep and give you what you want to know. This is crazy. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to leave that alone. We're going to go back to its magic, but I mean, just these similarities to like the ancient aliens theory and all that is uncanny. I've not seen something this spot on in a really long time. And so I need to leave it alone, but I'm just letting you know what I'm seeing, where I'm like, oh my God, that's an alien abduction.
But this is so Icelandic, not alien abduction, not necessarily, but like this dream dimension and like getting knowledge from dreams and conjuring, like inviting these land spirits and elves to come to your dreams. Sometimes you don't necessarily invite them. Sometimes they come to you, and you find this also in very recent folklore, or like 19th, 20th century. Still nowadays, people saying, they had a dream and there was this person that actually is an elf coming into the dreams because they really had something they need to tell them. And it's so Icelandic. There are studies and research. There's actually a very interesting book about collecting folklore information, like how many times you have story recorded about, dreams and land spirits and elves coming into your dreams, like everything related to dreams, like also in the Icelandic sagas. So we're talking about medieval times. They're
Yeah.
very recurrent. It's something very, very Icelandic.
Yeah, dreams.
They play a major role.
There was a study done by this, and
Yeah.
someone said that their dreams can be seen at least 530 times in old Icelandic literature.
That is a
So
very high number. So
this was people's reality,
yeah.
Yes.
essentially. And we can see, just to give you an example, there is this short tale, 13 or early 14th century short tale, Þorleifs þáttur Jarlskalds, which talks about a man named Hallbjörn, and he rests on Þorleifur Jarlskalds mound where he is buried, and he wants to know how to become a great poet. So later, when this man Hallbjörn falls asleep on the grave mound, he dreams that Þorleifur opens up his grave and teaches him poetry, because he's really wanted to learn how to become a poet. So he decided to fall asleep where he's rest, and then later he opens up the grave and teaches him poetry. So he's actively trying to get information through dreams.
Yeah, it's not just a dream. Also, the other element is death, or like a dead person. Anything that is dead kind of still keeps all some sort of knowledge that you want to, get as well. So as you were also mentioning, Voluspa, waking up, spirits, or like the practice of Utiseta, like to sit on the mount of a dead person, and you want to get some information or knowledge from that person. So you sit during the night on the mount and you try to communicate with the spirit, and this example that Kauri just mentioned. So there are different elements playing a role here, like the dimension of falling asleep and dreaming, and then also communicating with a dead person.
But let's not forget that this is not Viking Age Viking Age belief. It has developed a little bit, and we can see that they're using some kind of simple somatic stuffs to help them. But I think we are finding echoes of an older beliefs in here, and certainly to a certain extent this is reflecting a living folk belief.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily unbroken tradition, from Viking Age times up to, like 16, 17, 1800s. But as you say, there are elements still that are there. It's still from the same, I would say, traditional thought, although it's not maybe unbroken.
Right.
It makes sense in Iceland.
Yes, definitely. I mean, and it's interesting too to think about this being, that late. Certainly, gosh, by the time you get to say 1600, Iceland has been Christian for half a millennium by that point in time, and yet, you still
Catholic and Lutheran then. So they also had, it's Christian definitely,
right.
But then major change, because we are Catholic first, and then comes Lutheranism. So there's also this change as well.
Right. But to see that this sort of traditional folkloric type of belief, still there, all those centuries later, just kind of alongside it, or underground if it is, but it's still it's not completely wiped out by Christianity.
Alive.
It's interesting that they're using the name in the letter that followed the manuscript. They used the word Huldufólk, which means elves or álfar, but using the term Huldufólk is a little bit like those you should not name, because if you call their names, then you're
already sort of conjuring them up,
provoking them.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw this one the first time, and right here, which obviously I'm sure it's not it, but that spells ergot, right? And do you know ergot poisoning in the Middle Ages was a relatively common thing, right? If you know what that is, it has to do with the, what is it, fungus or mold or something that grows in grains, right? That people then, you can get high off that, and people having sort of hallucinations, and now what we would call that some kind of psychedelic experience or something. But I thought, wow, okay, maybe ergot poisoning is what's explaining all of these images and what's going on in this book.
Yeah. It's definitely. I was looking a little bit into that, but I didn't find, like, with this charm, this is a different kind of charm. I didn't find any, like, based on the text that is written here, it has nothing really to do with that.
Okay.
I
Which is,
think
yeah.
what we're dealing with here is that, Icelanders, they had access to various literature and various European literature. And this was very exotic to Icelanders to be able to carve this kind of symbols or sigils and getting these foreign formulas and foreign words. But when you read the text here, it has literally nothing to do with it, which is very interesting. This
Yeah.
one,
Also, this is more like Latin, sounding Latin, and there are, well, not necessarily in this one, in Galdrabok, the previous manuscript, in the
Yeah.
same edition, like several times there are Latin formulas. Some of them are accurate and they're actually quotes from, I don't know, the Bible or whatever. Other times it's like Latin that doesn't really make sense. It's not really Latin. It's just like some Latin sort of formulas that kind of sound like, important if you're, reciting a spell, but they don't really make sense. So, which also gave me a bit of headache when I was also helping with the text and because I did the index for the edition, so trying to put things into context and translating Latin and stuff. So sometimes you find, like also in another image, I don't remember if it's before, like the other one with the drawings, ergo, that, yeah, in this case is ergo. It doesn't have the T, then is CB, then is ator, that sounds like sator, but there's no S, and then is kiemi. And sometimes it's a bit hard to really understand exactly what's going on here.
it reminds, we thought about the Sator square.
Yeah, but then it's ator and not sator, and there are no other words that would,
So,
remind.
like, where did they come? This certainly doesn't sound like Icelandic. This sounds like something.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound properly Latin either.
Yeah.
You know what it
So,
sounds like, and like related to what you were saying earlier about dreams is, like some people, and I'm actually one of them. I dream like really vividly
Yeah,
every night. It's
yeah.
like going to the movies somewhere or something, and I remember my dreams as well. But I know that there are people who like will keep a little, like tablet or something, beside their bed and like wake up and then just jot
And
down.
the writes down, yeah.
Right, yeah. And so like this sort of reminds me of something like that where it's like, oh, in the middle of the night when, they woke up and wrote it down, it probably made perfect sense. And then they woke up and looked and it was like ERGOSIBI, like got no idea what that says. It's like it made sense in the middle of a dream, but now it makes no
Yeah,
sense at all.
totally. Yeah, when also sometimes maybe you dream like some words that, they make sense in the dream, but then when you wake up and you're more, you gain awareness again in like this word is not any language I know of,
Yeah.
or like what does it mean? And then maybe, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a good point.
should we read this spell? This is the straight after the.
So yeah, do you want to know what happens
Yeah.
next?
Yes.
So I wrote an introduction to this manuscript, and I was trying to put the text into context, Icelandic folklore context, and I had a lot of troubles when it comes to the images because I asked a lot of people around the university area, and it's like they like, oh, I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. So I didn't achieve much when it comes to the imagery, but when it comes to the text, I could find a lot of similarities here and there in Icelandic folk beliefs. But this one comes straight after the first spell, when you have provoking this land spirit to talk to you inside your dream and receiving knowledge. Do you want that land spirit to be dancing around your house or your dreams all nights after that? I don't know. So, based on this text here, it seems that you're trying to calm it down again. So first is raising it up, and after receiving the information, you want to restore the order and to
put it down
again. Because it says that after this stay under, it's basically hinting to go back into the ground under my feet again. And then there are some indication and carve this, and then turn these tablets facing the earth where this land spirit live, I suppose, and walk around it, and then things are kind of restored in order. Something like that. So that's this one was very, very tricky. So basically, also the goal with this edition is I'm providing here the text and the translation and some basic information. But if anyone has other ideas, please do your research this. And my goal is I'm the pioneer, but there are still so many.
This is the tip of the iceberg, and we don't have all the answers.
No.
Like this is actually, which was very exciting. Like it was a super cool project, trying to decipher it and stuff.
And I encourage anyone to try to research this.
There are still question marks. There are things that we are not really sure about, or like we think the translation we gave should make sense, but as we say, there were also so many abbreviations. So, sometimes it's a bit hard when you have 2 words abbreviated in just 2 letters, trying to see.
There's also a lot of personal abbreviations.
That's also the thing.
Which is tricky.
There are abbreviations that are not maybe so common when you look at manuscript literature, if it's maybe I don't know, religious kind of text, or like any kind of text. Sometimes you find certain verbs always abbreviated in the same way. So, like this is like vera, to be, or this is like whatever. Or like also in Latin, homo, sometimes it's just the H, and so on and so on. But this is more, this is not something common. This is something personal. It's like when you write down your own notes, and you follow the system that you have in your brain that makes sense to you, but then someone else looks at your notes and doesn't understand anything, So it was quite challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
To go through the material.
So Magnusson got it in the 17th century, but is there any indication at all, like where he got it from, or where it may have originated? What part of Iceland?
Not that we have it.
No.
Yeah. I wish we could know
more. The person who signed this letter that followed the manuscript, he just signed H. Thorn, this, S.
Yeah, the thorn,
And who can that be? It's often the question.
Could be.
We don't know if it's a he. We don't know if it's a she. We don't know.
Or human.
Don't know.
Or a human. Stop it, CJ. It's not an alien.
No, unfortunately, it would be awesome, to get more information, because it would add so much, some extra information about the material, and it would bring it even more to life. But what is cool is that this material, actually, this manuscript survived. That is not given for granted, given also the time period it belongs to. So having something like this in the 1600 in Iceland, it would risk you a death penalty. Like people were actually persecuted and burned at the stake to possess this material, to have it was the sort of the proof you are doing magic and this is illegal and you must be put to death.
Yeah, certainly also at this time when possessing this was illegal, and and Iceland was a lot under the European influence on magic persecution at the time.
Denmark,
especially from Denmark, so doing this was maybe not okay to officials.
No, definitely not okay. People could accuse you, but let's say, like we have, at least from the sources here in Iceland, we know that at least in that time period, from the 1600 up to 17, when is the last execution? 1700? Don't remember the exact date. The first one should be 1625, but nevertheless, we know that at least 150 people were actually accused, but not all of them executed. Like only 22 or 23 people out of these 150 were. And like when people would accuse you of witchcraft or like doing, like, yeah, you caused my wife to get sick or whatever, or my kid died because you cursed my kid using magic and whatever. Um, like of all accusation, if the officials would actually find you in possession of a grimoire, that was a bit like end of the game. There was no way for you to kind of show that, yeah, you're innocent, or like, it's just a mistake, or people are just envious or whatever. It's just that was it.
The last person was burned 1685.
1685, okay.
But people would get persecuted after that, but they wouldn't
it's still illegal.
They wouldn't receive death penalty.
No, and then in the 1800, and especially end of 1800, like 1880 and so on, then this material kind of has a revival. Like people get very interested into that, but then like you don't get burned any longer. It's safe so to write or to have a grimoire at home, and then
There's a funny account of a priest who complains in 1817 that I've been taking a lot of magic symbols from people's home when I'm visiting them and trying to teach them some Christianity. They show me this Christian protective magic stuffs, and I'm like, what are you doing, people? He's complaining.
Yeah, we have like accounts about priests complaining like, these silly farmers that they should rather read psalms and pray, and then they're still carving these magic symbols and stuff. So yeah.
I think that's interesting, though. I mean, given, and for us at this podcast, even going back into the Viking Age, I mean, when Iceland first became Christian in the year 1000, and we know for a little period of time there, right, that the church allowed, some of these traditional beliefs as long as you did things in private and stuff like that, which is always, generally what they did in order to kind of ease the transition, into Christianity. But then to hear that like some of this stubbornness is still, that's an Icelandic thing too, right? We were talking before, right, about being late to everything. Well, stubborn, maybe a little bit of that too, and then it's like 700 years later, 800 years later, they're still persisting in these rural beliefs that the Christianity hasn't managed to stamp it out yet.
Yeah, well, when it comes to this magic symbols, they're definitely these magic symbols are not Viking Age, but using of the term magic and use of magic, of course, continues and develops over time.
And it never really dies out. In that sense.
I mean, the Viking Age magic, if we look at that was more around women delivering prophecy at a certain liminal time of the year, or people doing something called gjörningar, seiður and gjörningar, changing the landscape.
Or changing weather.
Causing
a storm or like an avalanche.
And that was a lot, and it seems that they were doing a lot of actions and loudness and
loudness.
So loudness.
There's a lot of the sound plays a big role usually in the ritual. Like songs and percussions.
We don't really find like magic symbols. I mean, people carve runes, but it's more about actions, loudness, and seiður platform. And people were using platforms.
The performance per se.
Performance,
So it's a bit more, let's say, a bit more into the shamanistic kind of, communication with spirits and stuff. At least also from the sources we have about that time, we don't have like this kind of material that we find later on, like in the 1600 about magic, about this carving and these spells is like a bit different.
But what's similar is there are certain formulas, and for example, in the previous book, in the Galdrabók, there is this one love spell, for the lack of a better word, where a person is,
in this case, a man, definitely.
Where this man is cursing a woman. If he doesn't love him back, then he puts on a curse on her. And he's reciting a certain words and formulas, and Nathan Lindquist, the Swedish scholar, he was arguing that this is something similar we see in the Eddic poem Skírnismál, when Freyr sends Skirnir to ask Gerður
To convince her,
yeah,
basically forcing her to accept the proposal.
And when she's reluctant, Skirnir puts on this curse on her.
Yeah, like
so we're seeing this kind of continuation, arguably.
It reminds me, CJ, of your favorite Viking movie, The Northman.
Yeah.
Where there was some serious kind of ritual, like shamanistic magic kind of stuff in that movie, which I was kind of like, all right, I don't know, I get it. I'm thinking it's a little bit over the top, I don't know, but so you're saying maybe it was real, like all this just kind of wild and a lot of noise and people behaving in an animalistic way, and
you find in Icelandic law codes that performing a certain kind of magic with your words against against other people or against livestock is
against the law.
It's against the law and it's a punishable act.
So if you have to have a certain point, you have laws in a law code about that. That was real. If they have to have laws to ban it,
right?
Trouble.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, do Icelanders still believe in these things?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Hey, I've been to the Elfstone there down by the river where the hotel
I think, I'm not Icelandic, but I've been living now, here for 5 years, and I studied here, and I have an Icelandic partner, and I feel so much part of society, and I have a very deep interest in all this kind of stuff. So I think it's super cool. It's so fascinating, and I don't know. I think there's something I don't know with Icelandic landscape and these land spirits and stuff. It's just, I don't know. It's not necessarily believe it or not. It's just like, at least my personal experience also as an outsider. I feel sometimes when you are walking in nature and you're in certain areas, I just really feel I don't want to fuck things up.
Right.
It's like, it feels like, I don't know. I think maybe because I always felt like a connection with nature whatsoever, maybe it's just also my personal thing, it just, I feel like I want to respect everything, like landscape or the moss or like the grass I'm walking into and stuff. There's a certain kind of pure nature and energy here in Iceland. I don't know, I just feel sometimes, especially in certain areas where I feel like I'm very aware of what surrounds me, and I don't want to be disrespectful, if that makes sense,
totally. That totally makes sense. Like when I was there last year, I went down to the Elfstone and excuse me, I was taking some photos for my students to show them. And then also the site, where the temple is perpetually being built and not finished. But
I know
but so then, people had left stuff on the Elfstone, right? Like some coins, and like there was a granola bar and a flower, or, and things like that. And so I'm trying to explain that to them. And then, and then they asked me, like, so what of the spirits, the land spirits would you, do you like the best or whatever, and I said elves, and they were like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just kind of like them. I just sort of, they're sort of comforting that they're out there, even though they can be mischievous or whatever. And I said, and so when I was done at that stone that day, taking those pictures, I didn't have anything with me. So then when I went back home where I live in Mosfellsbad, I like, up hiking up in the hills up by like, Ulfarsfjall, and there's like a little outcropping up there, and I was like, okay, and so I left a couple of kroner to make up for what I didn't have when I was at the Elfstone.
Just to give an offer, or yeah,
right. So you just make a little offering to just be like, we're all good, just like.
Yeah, this is interesting. And to put things into context, last summer we were traveling north of Iceland, and I met this old man who lived at this farm, and I started to talk to him, and I noticed a certain mound or a rock hill, and the folklorist mind in me thought like, I bet there's some history over there.
Yeah.
So I started to ask him, and he grew up in this area, and I started to ask him, is there something about this particular place over there? Is this some kind of, do Álfar reside in there, and hidden folks or something? And he was kind of dodging my question.
At the beginning.
But then we really started to talk about folklore and
And
talk about
books
books
and
and various old things.
literature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of gained his trust, and later, like an hour later, he took me aside from all the other people and said, like, "Yeah, this is a elf.
There are elves there.
There are elves there." And when I was a kid, I was strictly forbid to play around it, to have loudness around it,
Yeah, to not disturb.
and to pay my deepest respect. So he was like, so it sticks with him. It's something that he stills,
Yeah.
it's part of his reality,
Yeah. It's part of your worldview.
I like that. I like it.
Yeah, me
Remi-
too. It also puts it makes the landscape living.
Yeah, it's alive.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because I tell my students that I have them read a couple of things about, why Icelanders still believe in elves kind of thing. And they're like, do they really? I'm like, no, it's part of a continuation of, a long, long, long folkloric tradition. And I said, but now modern Icelanders, like it's sort of more, at least in my estimation, the elves are sort of a proxy for the natural world, right? And so that if you're going to go, I can't build a road over there because that's elf habitat. What it really means is that's sensitive natural habitat that needs to be left alone and protected.
Yeah.
So
it is a lot of if you ask maybe 100 people on the streets here, do you believe in elves? I think majority of them will say no.
right.
But I don't think this is a yes or no question.
No, maybe it's not the right question.
It's what if belief.
Yeah.
So, for example, there was a study done by this, and
Terry Gunnar?
yeah, Terry Gunnar.
Terry Gunnar.
He did this survey. He asked Icelanders, let's say you bought a house, and in your garden is this big rock, but it's a little bit in your way. And you have this great idea to remove it, to build a wooden sun.
Patler.
Yeah,
how do you
like remove it to build?
Good. How is in English?
Wooden platform for
when you go out of the house, you put this wooden platform, then you can put
deck?
chairs and
the deck. Yeah.
And you're about to blow it up or remove it.
This rock, yeah.
And when you're about to do it, your neighbor, who's an old woman, comes to you and say, "What are you doing?
Are you really doing that? Don't you know there's an elf in it?"
Yeah, there are elves in there. And then people were asked, would you then remove it? And people mostly say like, no, I wouldn't risk it.
No, don't touch it.
It's a lot of what if belief.
Yeah. Which is very interesting. Like, do you believe? Nah. But would you, blow this rock up if, and they're like, nah. No,
like I'm not like I don't really believe, but I'm not going to risk it.
Yeah, basically.
That's how I imagined like Vikings in my books. I have the characters talking a lot about the mythological creatures. It's like, oh, do you actually believe in the monster out in the water? No, but I'm not going to risk it.
Like, what if?
That's one of the things with folklore. It's folk traditions can't stick for so long because people don't want to risk things.
Right. Well, it's better the known. Yeah, better the known than the unknown, right?
Yeah.
I'm that way with ghosts. I'm all on that whole of course the Germans did this. There's a research group out of Germany that figured out that most ghost sightings happen within a certain radius of like an electrical grid. Right.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's actually the electromagnetic field that's affecting. And then the same researchers put a helmet on people and then activated the helmet with certain electromagnetic fields that then made the people think that there were other people around them. Right. Like they couldn't directly see people, but they could see kind of shadows and apparitions, kind of like what you see with a ghost. So they more or less proved that, ghost, and also they showed a correlation between like the number of like alleged ghost sightings and then the deployment of electrical grids across the world. And so it was just, I'll have to find that for you, Terry, because it kind of put a nail in the coffin, unfortunately, of ghosts. But if you point out a house and it looks creepy, I won't go in it. Logically,
but then there's the question, if it happens even if it's just like, what you're saying, electromagnetic, whatever field in your brain, how, but then it's still real to you. Like, what's reality then after all?
Well, this is the
Like,
thing. When our last guest with Ross Downing, when we were talking with him about, some of the issues with, people who co-opt the Vikings and the Viking Age for various, not good reasons and what have you. But he said, remember, CJ, he said, you ask yourself the question, why is it you're interested in Vikings? That it says something about you, that you're so interested in this. And I was thinking about that. And for me, I mean, I've always sort of been a medievalist. I mean, not sort of, I have been a medievalist at heart, where and I think for me, it is just this, it's the pre-modern world, that is so different than what, I mean, the scientific revolution and everything that came after that to me just really fundamentally changed the way people view things. And you sort of get to this kind of, scientific certainty about things. And it definitely takes the magic out of the world in many ways. And so I really find it interesting to live in a time period prior to that where you don't have that kind of scientific certainty about things. And then, it makes perfect sense to you that there are elves in the rocks. Yeah.
and also a lot of ghosts
Yeah.
in Iceland.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look also the folklore and like all this kind of creatures and stuff, actually, I think the percentage of ghosts also in folk tales are even higher than elves.
Is that what
Yeah.
Draugr? Is there?
Yeah.
Draugr, yeah,
Yeah.
Draugr.
Yeah.
And the people
Yeah.
used magic to conjure draugar a lot
Or
too.
to put them down.
Or to
Like
put them
if
down.
they're really annoying and nasty,
So-
then you have like spells to just, get rid of them.
Yeah.
Or you can send them
For example, there is
to
this.
someone you don't like.
For example, there is this one famous story about this woman who was doing a lot of magic near Flúðir in Iceland. And around this area, there's a lot of hot springs coming up.
This is not too far from Reykjavik. It's more towards the south after Selfoss. It's around 1.5 hour
Yeah.
drive from Reykjavik to
Yeah.
give you more an idea. Yeah.
And she lived on a farm where she didn't have these hot springs around her, but another woman who lived a few kilometers away, she had a lot of hot springs around her to help her to cook food and warm up and so on. And so she was very envious. So she did this magic to wake up a draugur, a physical ghost. And she ordered him to go there and pick one hot spring up and
Carry.
carry it back to her farm. And when the draugur picked it up and he picked up this hot spring and was walking with it back, but then the sun came and he died and he dropped the hot spring in the middle of nowhere. So there is one hot spring in this area that is in the middle of nowhere, no context, just totally random. And that's called Draugakver, the hot spring of the draugur. And
this is the legend, like the story around it, like
there are a lot of
why it is there, because
there are a lot of legends like that. When magicians are changing something, or they change the landscape or something like that.
Yeah, see, this is the thing I try to explain to my students when you talk about the difference between sort of pre-Christian and post-Christian kind of thing, where it's the way that these people are understanding the world that they live
absolutely.
in, right? Like you're just saying. I mean, it's like somebody noticed there's this rando hot spring in a place. It's like, what's that about? Well, then, of course, what do? You make up a story about it, right? So that you can sort of try to understand, your surroundings and to deal with it. Again, when you don't have sort of scientific ideas in order to help you understand that. So it's more of like a way of, it's not like a religion like Christianity that's sort of this separate thing that you believe in. It's all of the magic and the beliefs and the rituals and everything are much more about just a deeply rooted sort of worldview, a way of understanding what we're doing here and why things happen.
Often blend together, it's like the same also when we see like this material that is 1700. It's not Viking, obviously. We're also far from that time period. But it's also very Christian. Like some of the spells or the symbols, some of the Latin formulas that you use, they are Christian. So this is something that maybe we find maybe people get a bit disappointed about. Like they still love the material, but sometimes they feel like, oh, but this is Christian and it's not sort of pre-Christian or like a pagan. I don't think you cannot call this material pagan kind of spells. It's very Christian, but that's also because that's the worldview of the people
Yeah,
writing down these spells, like they are Christian, but then they're also
but at the same time,
resourcing to spells and stuff and living folklore and something that is so ingrained also in their worldview. You don't necessarily need to separate things. They blend together.
And at the same time, I wouldn't say this is a Snow White version of ideal Christian community looks like. It's folklore and Christianity,
like obviously
lives
they live together. Then obviously this is also illegal kind of material. So in that sense, officially was not accepted. So people would, be persecuted. People would be put to death to use these kind of things. But it made sense when you read the material in the spells, like, and you see, like, sometimes there are even North gods that are, used in the spell, like as invocation, and then you have in the same sentence you have Thor, and then you have God Almighty, and you're like, whoa, but there's no separation. Really made sense to the person or the people back in the days using writing this material, like everything. It's all in their worldview, and this worldview it's one like embedded together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It's syncretic. That's lasts for a very long time. I think that fusion of the two. I mean, just think about that in terms of like this kind of way of understanding the world through magic and these various and then all the other gods and stuff like that. I mean, think about that like from time immemorial amongst your people, right? And then something else comes in and tries to supplant it, and it's not that easy to just completely take over and make everybody forget, right? What used to be such a deeply ingrained part of who they were, and that stuff. It makes sense that it can just be sort of fused together, and they both just kind of exist in this new space together, right?
Yeah. At the same time, the fact that they're provoking Thor and Loki sometime even it's not reflecting an unbroken tradition of worship or anything, but I think it's important to remember at the same time Icelander has had access to a lot of old grimoires, manuscripts, and
there's a huge manuscript culture here in Iceland,
and we see that in Icelandic text that after the Codex Regius, the poetry manuscript got discovered in 1643, we see a slight revival of this material and the usage of the gods, and there's a little bit of Renaissance going on. Like people are thinking like, wow, this is
it pertains more pagan, like pre-Christian religion, but it's still is part of our culture and tradition, is actually great, is fucking awesome poetry. So people, they rediscover it and like they love it. And although they are still Christian, obviously they're very Christian, and then they're definitely very Lutheran, but it doesn't mean that you cannot appreciate or revive this kind of material. And then you find it again like embedded in this like material that we were translating, this like magic.
And many of these people were very well read and learned, and they had access to old Greek stuff even, and they knew about classical studies and the gods from that time period. And I think that they might have thought like, damn, we have the same thing back in the days, let's use them.
You start to get like that, these periods of romanticism, right? Where it happens in the 19th century too, where, medievalism really becomes like all of the rage, right? People start to look back at sort of the mystical, sort of Christian period of the Middle Ages, because they're living in the hell of the post-industrial revolution, and so they're like, let's go back to that. So you start to
see that in everything, like even art and architecture, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that too, that they would just sort of have a little bit of a romantic kind of attraction to some of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
folklore
And you
from the
see
past.
that in the, some spells you have, as I say, Thor or Odin and Freyr, and then you have the God Almighty and Moses and, all these biblical characters, and you have archangels, and they are all kind of coming together when you are reciting this spell, conjuring up, these spirits or whatever is kind of, and I think this is quite folklorist as well. Like you don't necessarily need to pick either or, you just
Yeah.
kind of, you just use all these and forces because they just help you to make this spell more effective. You don't need to choose either just Christian or just the pagan old gods. It's just you put them together.
Yeah, and
They can go
arguably
together.
also a little bit demonic.
Yeah, not heavily demonic
No,
like
no.
this one, like maybe other kinds of magic literature in Europe, where you have also like demonology kind of manuscripts and stuff. This is not super, is in comparison a bit more Christian in that sense.
Yeah.
At least this material we were dealing with, or Icelandic magic manuscript, the one that we have, because there maybe, there were possibly way more that got destroyed,
Oh,
or
yeah, for
who knows
sure.
where they are.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
also working with the material we have now,
Yeah.
you have a lot of also biblical figures or like Latin quotes, as I said earlier, sometimes precise, like exactly, real quotes from the Bible or whatever kind of gospel. And sometimes you have like this sort of gibberish, pseudo Latin and stuff that maybe people heard or like read once and they were trying to record, and then they just write it down and it doesn't make sense. Like there are some words that work and others that are like, I was reading that, was like, what the hell is that?
But I thought it was a really telling story that you were trying to translate these Latin words, and sometimes you would read gibberish, but when you would pronounce it or say it
I was
aloud,
trying to say them aloud, and then I was like, wait, maybe it's this other word. And then, I did some research, and then maybe you find actually the real quotes that they were thinking about a gospel or like a biblical passage in the Bible. And then I'm like, yeah, okay. Then I see.
so it's something the person heard. It was something oral, maybe.
Yeah, or it could even be these people, there were materials circulating in Iceland, right? So stuff that would arrive. And I don't know if these people would have access, maybe, let's say, a friend of yours has it and is like illegal material, but is cool. So you're kind of going to the next farm where your friend has this material, I don't know, and you come together and you look at the material together, and then you go back home and you try to write it down.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's just we don't know exactly, but material was circulating here in Iceland, and also like in the bishoprics, like in Skálholt. You want to say the episode in Skálholt?
Yeah. They had Agrippa in Skálholt.
Agrippa. So
Cornelius Agrippa.
Yeah, they had a copy of that in the library.
Of Marcus Agrippa.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been to Skálholt. It's like in the middle of nowhere, kind of.
So they had in Skálholt, exactly. And then there's also a cool story about Skálholt, about magic manuscript and stuff. Like was the bishop that discovered like the guys.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to say the story.
There were some students. We were talking about 17th century here, that got busted with this grimoire.
And that's illegal, obviously.
Yeah.
And they were in Skálholt learning possibly to become priests. Right? It was the priest school.
Yeah.
And these guys are from, like important families. So they are not just random people. But yeah, they are busted with a grimoire.
Yeah. Luckily, the bishop, Brynjólfur Sveinsson, he wrote down the index of the grimoire. And so we don't know exactly what the spells were, what it says, but he wrote down an index of list of the spells, and
before destroying the manuscript.
Before destroying it.
This is a manuscript we don't have any longer, but also the people that got busted, they just got away with it because they
got a light punishment.
Light punishment. So it ended up well for them. I would argue because they were of good like aristocratic families. So, it wouldn't be maybe different if they were just, farmers, then possibly they would be put to death. But
Yeah, also Brynjólfur Sveinsson, he was starting to um, he was not in favor of burning people for this kind of stuff.
No,
It's
okay.
also the bishop.
Yeah, he was a bit
Well, that was
more
nice.
more merciful kind of.
We are talking about the same bishop that received Codes Regius.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
he's a bit more
the guy on the
open-minded.
1,000 kroner Icelandic bill, holding the Codes Regius.
Like the money,
Yeah.
the Icelandic cash.
But
Yeah.
that book they got busted with resembles Galdrabók a lot. It has similar kind of spells
Yeah.
according to the index.
Although it was way more extensive,
Yeah,
right?
it
It
was
was
longer.
around 80 spells, whereas the Galdrabók, that is also the first, the one that we translated as well, as 40, right?
43.
43. So yeah. So,
Nice.
yeah, this one
Well-
that got this at 80 would be awesome to have them. but-
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely put in the show notes all of the contact information and a link to Hildur, the publisher, so that people can buy it when they get the new
Yeah.
edition. Very, very popular. I even have students who've bought it
Great.
and have come to the
Absolutely.
readings in Portland here and stuff. So yeah, I mean it's a hot ticket item. So people can check it out. Also, the other books like Matthias's rune poems and Voljusfau, the works that Hildur does. But then also we can have, if you like, maybe some, if you want contact information for you all, so that if people have some other ideas about what these things might mean, that they can
Yeah,
get in
definitely,
touch with
Kali.
you.
Absolutely.
He has
I
a
would
good
be very-
Instagram
I would
account.
be very curious to hear if people have some ideas or
If there are questions,
Yeah.
just to contact us.
as I said, we don't have a definite answer for
No,
Hold
no.
the manuscript of Jarðskina, for example, but
Mm,
I think we're just making a path for future research.
Yeah,
yeah. This is
That's how I see it.
yeah.
awesome. Well, CJ?
I may have started a snowball because with the alien thing, maybe we can get them to look at it for you guys. Put it out there into that community. Hey guys, they're trying to get some help.
Alternative theory. But I see you have a Vegvisir.
He does it.
I'm sorry, what?
At your background.
By the to the left of the tree behind you.
I'm getting
It's
in
both
front
on
of it.
both sides actually.
Both side.
here?
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh no,
yeah.
these are just for show. I don't know what's on them.
I have
I
one
bought
too.
I bought them
I'm
on
telling
Amazon.
you.
I think they were put together by some kid in India, who's just getting a shop on Etsy started up.
And then
Oh,
you
there we
have
go.
also
That.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
a
what's that
Yeah,
called?
yeah,
The
that.
Norse
symbol
compass or
on
whatever?
the side
Yeah.
of the tree.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
Vegvisir, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Vegvisir. We also have one here on
Yeah.
our wall. So this is the guest.
Help you to see the way, the compass.
Yeah, okay, so it's the Vegvisir.
Yeah.
And this one is like Gestastavur. It's like
Yeah,
for
like
people to feel welcome.
Yeah.
Or like, people
Oh.
welcome. Our
Oh, nice.
good vibes only.
Nice.
had it there for many years.
Yeah. But we talk a lot about Jarðskina for a good reason, like super cool manuscript. But I don't know if we have maybe time to read maybe one spell from Galdrabók, like the other manuscript that is part of the edition.
Is it a healing spell? Because I need it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The one we had in mind is not healing. No, it's like very nasty one.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Maybe
no,
maybe
don't do
not.
it to me. Nope, I'm leaving.
It's not very to you. It's just
We'll put the notes in the show or put it in the show notes and people can read it for themselves.
I don't believe in magic, but I'm not going to risk it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are healing spells, but usually it's more for animals. Like, if your horse goes lame, then you carve this symbol on the tights and you recite this, so you help your horse to heal. Or if your sheep has some problem or your sheep is sick, then you do this ritual, you carve this symbol and you recite something and you try to help the sheep to heal again.
I had the idea to recite a fart spell
Fart
fart,
room.
a fart.
Yeah, fart.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Dude,
All right,
which
we're at the end here, so we'll go out on a good note, or we'll
Let's
go
do
out
it.
on a fart note. Go ahead.
Let's hear the fart
yeah.
room.
Should I recite it both in Icelandic or English, or just in English?
Your preference.
I'll
English probably for
Yeah,
Yeah,
English.
most of our audience, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
so
Write these letters. So
these
if you
letters are
see it, these are the runes,
Okay.
5 runes.
Oh, nice.
they're not the runes like Futhark and stuff. It's just
Right.
like these time period runes. Yeah.
Write these letters on white vellum with your blood. Draw blood from your thigh and say, I carve 8 æsir, 9 nauð, 13 thursar, who will make your body suffer with nasty, severe diarrhea and stomach pain, and let them all make your body suffer with extreme farting. Let your upper supports fall apart, let your bowels explode, and let your farting never stop day or night. Let you become as mindless as the fiend Loki was when he was bound by all the gods. In the mightiest name, Lord, God, Spirit, Creator, Odin, Thor, Savior, Freyr, Freya, Oper Satan, Helpers, mighty God, thou who protects thy followers, Utios mors noch vitalis.
Vitalis.
So,
Boom.
Wow. You know, I actually was familiar with fart runes before because I'm on another podcast with
Yeah.
Ian Stewart Sharp for his live pray. He does this. Hang on. He's got this game when the wolf comes. It's a role playing game that's like Vikings.
Hey, I didn't
It's
know.
in the Viking verse. So it's
Okay, cool.
the premise is the Norse gods won out over Christianity, and so it's kind of modern day, but if the Vikings had won, kind of thing. And one of the spells you can cast in here is fart runes, and I did so in I think
Yeah.
episode 6 against a Draegar. He was a Walking Dead guy, and I lit him up with fart runes and then shoved what is it a flare into him, and he blew up. And so it was well done. It's anyway, but yeah,
dangerous.
that's what I remember. It reminded me of. Now I can go back to Ian and say, "Hey, I heard a real fart rune."
But no,
See, it's
it's
not
one.
anything to do with aliens, CJ. You've already done it. You're part of it.
I still think it's aliens.
It's one of my
Ah.
favorites to recite. It's just because, wow, it's so nasty, and I find it so funny actually. Like the intensity, of this spell. Like you
Yeah.
must hate someone pretty bad to wish this person, something like that. And also to put it into context, in Iceland in this period, Iceland was very poor, it's not like the advanced rich country, that it is now. And those are like farmers, and you just live, you don't have private
everyone
space.
sleep together, and
Everyone sleeps together in the same room in the bathtub.
You don't have a toilet, you sit in a bucket.
Yeah, that you place
So
under the
everyone
bed.
hates you.
Yeah, basically. Can you imagine, like you
this is
fart
just
at night and you just
they're just basic people. So this is a base type of behavior of just let's
yeah.
just
So
go
if you
straight
hate
to
someone,
farting and diarrhea.
yeah. And also, I mean, that was a thing, like now, if we get diarrhea in modern days, you get like some medicine to stop it and you're going to be fine again, just drink more water and, it's all
Yeah,
good.
right.
But back in the days, it's just like it was a serious problem. You could die, easily.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's really,
Yeah.
if you hate someone really badly, that was a
Well, on
kind of,
that note,
on that note,
I mean, maybe we've peaked here. So, but thank you for joining us. This has been really interesting and fun.
thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah. So again, we'll include all the information below in the notes so people can check out the book for themselves. And
Definitely.
yeah.
Actually, is online again. Like
Yeah,
they just got
restocked.
it was sold
Another
out.
edition. Okay, good.
Possible to purchase now. Yeah, it's available again.
All right.
Wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks so much
Thank
for being
you
on the
so
show.
much.
Tack för det.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Bye.